The morning light slipped gently across the edge of a small wooden table, illuminating a simple clay pot filled with dark, quiet soil. Inside that soil rested a tiny seed, fragile, unnoticed, uncelebrated. Each day, a young boy would stand before it, holding a small cup of water. He poured it slowly, carefully, never missing a day. And every day, he waited for something to happen. But the soil remained unchanged, still, silent, as if hiding a secret too young to reveal. The boy sometimes wondered if his effort mattered at all. He would stare at the dirt, hoping for a sign, a sprout, a leaf, anything that proved his patience wasn't wasted. But nature kept its mystery buried, working in silence beneath the surface. What the boy could not see were the tiny roots forming, stretching gently into the earth, gathering strength before they dared to rise. Growth was happening, just not in a way that satisfied the impatient eye. The world around him was no different. People sought quick results, instant success, sudden transformation. They wanted blooms without roots and achievement without effort. Few understood that the strongest things in life begin in secret, growing quietly where no applause exists. The seed's journey was slow, but it was real. And like the seed, every dream begins with small, unseen steps. Far from that windowsill, in a small neighborhood where narrow streets carried the sounds of morning life, another story was unfolding, one that mirrored the quiet struggle of the hidden seed. A young man named Arav walked among those waking streets, unaware that he too was a seed, waiting for his own moment to grow. He didn't realize that his life, stuck and silent as it seemed, was on the verge of change. Not through a miracle, not through a sudden breakthrough, but through the smallest step he had yet to take.
Arav sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the cluttered desk across the room. The sunlight filtering through the curtains painted soft lines across notebooks stacked unevenly, books he once promised himself he would read, and scattered papers filled with half-written plans. His room felt like a museum of unfinished intentions, quiet, dusty reminders of dreams he never found the courage to chase. Every morning, he repeated the same silent ritual. He woke up early, not out of discipline, but out of restlessness. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, searching for some sign of progress, some hint of confidence. But the face looking back at him always seemed unsure. Not defeated, just unsure. As if he belonged somewhere better, but didn't quite believe he could reach it. He wanted success. He wanted a life that made him proud. He imagined himself achieving great things, becoming someone respected, someone capable, someone who proved that dreams weren't foolish illusions. But every time he thought about taking action, the path felt too long. The mountain felt too tall. The first step felt too small to matter. So, he did nothing. His dreams became heavy, not inspiring. His plans felt like burdens he carried from day to day. He waited for motivation, for the perfect moment, for a dramatic surge of energy that would transform his life overnight. But that moment never came. Instead, days blended into each other, quiet and repetitive, until Arav began to believe that maybe he was meant for an ordinary life after all. On this particular morning, he stood by his window and watched people rushing down the street with purpose. Workers heading to their jobs, students with backpacks bouncing on their shoulders, shopkeepers rolling open their shutters to start the day. Everyone looked like they knew what they were doing. Everyone looked like they belonged somewhere. He felt like an outsider in his own life. Unable to sit still, Arav stepped outside, hoping a walk might clear the fog clouding his thoughts. He walked past familiar faces and familiar buildings, his mind drifting between hope and frustration. As he turned the corner, A rhythmic tapping caught his attention. Slow, steady, almost calming. An old carpenter was working outside a small workshop, leaning over a large, unfinished wooden gate. His movements were deliberate, patient. He tapped each nail into place with careful precision, as though he believed every strike mattered. The carpenter noticed him and smiled softly, without stopping his work. Arov nodded back politely, expecting the moment to pass. But the old man spoke in a gentle voice that carried surprising weight. "You're thinking too far ahead," he said, tapping another nail. "That's why you feel stuck." Arov froze. He hadn't said a word. How could the man possibly know? The carpenter continued, eyes focused on the wood. People want to fix their whole life in a single day. They dream of the result, but fear the first step. They forget that everything I build starts the same way. One nail, one moment, one small action. Arov looked at the half-finished gate. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was becoming something. The old man placed another nail on the wood. You don't need to change everything today. Just change the next 10 minutes. That's enough. The words sank deep into Arov's heart. For the first time in a long time, something inside him felt lighter. Not transformed, just lighter, as if the impossible suddenly seemed impossible, but only through steps small enough for him to take. He walked away slowly, carrying with him a simple truth, a truth he knew he could no longer ignore. His life didn't need a miracle. It needed a beginning. And beginnings, he realized, are always small.
The next morning, Arov found himself walking back to the carpenter's workshop, though he wasn't entirely sure why. Something about the old man's words had stayed with him through the night, echoing softly every time he tried to calm his thoughts. Perhaps he hoped the man would say something else, something that might help him understand the confusion he carried inside. Or maybe he simply wanted to be near someone who seemed grounded, someone whose hands moved with purpose, while his own life felt directionless. When he arrived, the carpenter was already at work, hammering nails into the wooden frame. But this time, Arov noticed something he hadn't seen before. The man's movements were slow, not because of age, but because of intention. Every strike was measured. Every placement of a nail was thoughtful. There was no rush, no frustration, no desire to finish quickly, only patience. Arov stood quietly, unsure whether to speak. The carpenter, without looking up, motioned for him to come closer. "You're back," he said calmly. "Good. It means you're searching." Arov felt something twist in his chest, an unspoken truth he didn't know how to offer in return. "You looked troubled yesterday, worried about the distance between where you are and where you want to be." Arov lowered his gaze, the weight of the man's words pulling at him. "It just feels impossible sometimes," he admitted softly. "I want to change my life. I want to achieve something meaningful. But the goals I set, they feel too big. And when I can't do them perfectly, I give up." The carpenter smiled faintly. "That is the problem with your generation. You think success is built by giant leaps, but the truth is, a giant leap is only the sum of many small steps taken with consistency." He picked up another nail, placing it carefully against the wood. "See this gate? I could try to finish it in one day. I could rush, force the wood, hammer quickly, but the gate would be weak. It wouldn't last. So I choose a different way. Each day, a few nails. Each day, a little progress." He looked at Arov now, his eyes steady. "What matters is not the size of your step, but the direction. If you take even one small step consistently, your life will begin to change." Arov let those words sink in, feeling them settle somewhere deeper than logic, somewhere closer to truth. "But what if it's not enough?" he whispered. The old man chuckled softly. "If you water a seed once, it dies. If you water it every day, it grows, not because of how much water you give it, but because you give it every day."
A breeze drifted through the workshop, carrying with it the scent of sawdust and fresh wood. Arav watched the carpenter wipe his hands and sit on a small stool. The old man gestured for him to sit as well. "What do you want to change first?" he asked. Arav hesitated. His dreams were too large to name, his weaknesses too many to count. But one thing came to mind, a simple thing, yet something he had always failed to commit to. "I want to become disciplined. I want to develop a habit, something I can actually stick to." The carpenter nodded. "Good. Then start with something so small it feels easy, something you cannot fail at. 10 minutes, no more." Arav frowned. 10 minutes won't change anything." The old man leaned forward. "It will change everything because it will change you." Arav left the workshop feeling strangely lighter. The path ahead was still uncertain, still long, still overwhelming, but for the first time, he didn't feel paralyzed by it. He felt capable. Not because the journey had become smaller, but because he had discovered a way to begin. That evening, he set a timer for 10 minutes. Just 10. He sat down with a book he had abandoned months ago and began to read. The words felt unfamiliar at first, the pages stiff, but slowly, something inside him settled. When the timer ended, he closed the book gently, feeling a quiet pride he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Outside his window, the world went on as usual, unaware of the tiny change happening inside him. But as he slept that night, a small seed of discipline had already taken root.
The next day began differently. For the first time in a long time, Arav woke with a sense of intention, a quiet certainty that today mattered, because today was another 10 minutes. He didn't rush, he didn't make grand plans. He simply reached for the book, opened to where he left off, and set the same timer. When the alarm rang, he felt a spark of satisfaction. 2 days in a row. It was nothing extraordinary, yet it felt powerful. He began to notice small shifts in his behavior. He walked a little straighter. He felt a bit more patient with himself. He no longer stared at his reflection with frustration. Instead, he saw someone who was trying, someone who had taken 2 steps. Small, yes, but meaningful. Later that afternoon, he passed by the carpenter's workshop again. The old man was sanding a wooden plank, his movements steady and unhurried. Arav approached quietly, hoping the man would notice him. Without turning, the carpenter spoke. "Day 2?" he asked with a hint of warmth. Arav nodded. "Yes, just 10 minutes again." "Good," the old man said. 10 minutes done today is better than 5 hours planned and never started." They stood together in silence, listening to the scraping of sandpaper against wood. Arav felt comfort in the carpenter's presence. Something about the old man's simplicity made his own worries feel smaller, more manageable. "Do you know why small habits are powerful?" the carpenter asked. Arav shook his head. "Because they shape identity," the man said. "Each day you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you become someone who keeps promises, someone who can show up, someone who can grow." Arav thought about that long after he left the workshop. The idea that he could become a different person, not through force, not through perfection, but through small, repeated choices, felt revolutionary. That evening, he added another tiny habit. After reading for 10 minutes, he spent 10 more stretching his body, something he had always ignored. It wasn't difficult, it wasn't impressive, but it felt right. Days began to pass like this, quietly, steadily, with small actions woven into the rhythm of his life. A 10-minute reading session, a 10-minute stretch, a 10-minute walk. He didn't try to do more. He didn't try to push himself too fast. He simply showed up. And in that simplicity, something unexpected happened. He began to feel stronger inside, not physically, though that would come later, but mentally, emotionally. His mind no longer felt like a battlefield of doubts and excuses. Instead, it felt like a calm, open space where possibility could breathe. One evening, after finishing his small routines, Arav stood on his balcony and looked up at the night sky. The stars felt closer somehow, not because they had moved, but because he had. He felt a connection to the world he had been running from. He felt a quiet confidence growing inside him. He realized that change had begun, not loudly, not dramatically, but gently, like the first root that breaks through the soil long before the sprout appears above ground. His life still looked the same from the outside, but inside, Arav had taken his first real steps toward becoming the person he hoped to be. And this time, he wasn't going to stop.
Weeks passed quietly, and Arav's life began to take on a rhythm it never had before. The habits were still small, barely noticeable to anyone watching from the outside, but inside, something profound was shifting. Each day felt a little less heavy, a little less chaotic. The blur of meaningless hours slowly transformed into a gentle flow of purposeful moments. He no longer woke up feeling lost. Now he woke with a subtle sense of direction, the kind that doesn't shout, but whispers steadily. One early morning, before the sun had fully risen, Arav stepped outside for his 10-minute walk. The streets were hushed, touched by the coolness of dawn. He breathed deeply, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs. For the first time in a long while, he felt present, fully present, not haunted by regrets of the past or anxieties about the future, just there, in the moment, taking slow steps, feeling the ground beneath his feet. As he walked, he noticed details he had ignored for years. The gentle sway of leaves in the early breeze, the faint warmth beginning to spread across the sky, the distant barking of a dog greeting the new day. Everything seemed more alive, not because the world had changed, but because he had. When he returned home, he sat by his desk and opened his book. 10 minutes became 12. 12 became 15. He didn't force it. The time simply expanded on its own. His mind felt clearer. Ideas stayed longer. Focus no longer ran away from him. It rested beside him like a companion, learning to trust him again. Later that day, Arav visited the carpenter. The old man was polishing the nearly finished gate, its once rough wood now smooth and golden in the sunlight. Arav admired the transformation. The gate looked strong, beautiful even, but he knew it hadn't happened through grand gestures. It had happened through the quiet discipline of many small, consistent actions. "You see," the carpenter said softly, without Arav saying a word. "Small work done daily becomes something sturdy, something meaningful." Arav nodded, his eyes fixed on the gate. "I've been keeping up with my habits. They're small, but I feel different." The old man smiled. "Not small," he corrected gently. "Foundational." They stood in silence for a while, watching sunlight dance across the wood. Arav felt a calm pride grow in him, something he hadn't tasted in years. He realized that he had been wrong about success. It wasn't a sudden transformation. It wasn't a perfect day or an extraordinary moment. It was this: the quiet stacking of small, ordinary days that slowly built a life worth living. That evening, as he completed his routines, Arav felt something shifting within him. His habits were no longer fragile promises. They were becoming roots, strong, steady, and growing deeper each day. He didn't know yet where his journey would lead. He only knew one thing for certain. He was no longer the same person who had once felt stuck. He had taken responsibility for his life, and in doing so, he had begun to shape a new version of himself, one step at a time.
As the days turned into weeks, Arav found himself drawn to challenges he once avoided. The fear that used to hold him back no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a doorway. A doorway he had never dared to approach, let alone open. But now, something within him whispered that he was capable of more. One evening, while cleaning his desk, Arav stumbled upon an old notebook, its pages yellowed at the edges. Inside were dreams he had once written with hopeful enthusiasm, plans to learn a new skill, goals he swore he would achieve, ideas he believed would change his future. But somewhere along the way, he had abandoned every one of them. He sat still for a long moment, staring at the ink that had faded with time. The old Arav would have closed the book and tucked it away, choosing to forget the ambitions that made him feel guilty. But the new Arav felt something different, a quiet courage rising within him. He turned to a page titled "Things I Want to Become," written years ago. The list was long, but one line caught his attention. "I want to be someone who finishes what he starts." He traced the words with his fingertip, feeling the weight of a promise he had once made to himself. That night, he made a decision, not to chase every dream at once, but to choose one small goal, one he could begin with calm intention. He picked a skill he had always wanted to learn but never committed to. He found a beginner's video online and decided to practice for just 10 minutes. No pressure, no expectations, just 10 minutes of presence. The first day felt awkward. He made mistakes. His movements were clumsy. He felt like a beginner, which he was, but instead of judging himself, he simply smiled and continued. The next day, he practiced again. The mistakes were still there, but now they felt lighter, more forgivable. Each repetition, no matter how imperfect, formed a tiny thread of progress woven into the fabric of his new routine. One afternoon, he visited the carpenter again. The gate was now finished, standing tall and firm. Arav admired it quietly, realizing how something that once looked impossible now looked inevitable. "You finished it," Arav said softly. The old man chuckled. "I didn't finish it. The small steps did." Arav let those words sink in. They felt like the truth he had been waiting to hear. The carpenter studied him with kind eyes. "Tell me, what small step have you added to your life now?" Arav hesitated, almost shy to admit it. "I've started learning a new skill, just a few minutes every day." The carpenter nodded approvingly. "Good, then you are no longer waiting for life to change. You are shaping it." As Arav walked home, he felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest. Confidence, not the loud, boastful kind, but the quiet, steady kind that grows only through daily effort. He realized something remarkable. Every small action he took was building a version of himself he had once believed was out of reach. That night, as he practiced once more, he noticed a subtle improvement. His hands moved with slightly more control. His mind focused more easily. Progress was slow, almost invisible, but it was real. And that truth alone made his heart steady.
He began to understand that true success didn't arrive suddenly. It grew slowly, formed by countless small decisions. The path ahead was long, but he wasn't afraid anymore. He was becoming someone who showed up, someone who tried, someone who grew quietly and consistently. And though the world didn't see it yet, Arav was transforming, just like the seed buried beneath the soil, preparing to break through into the light.
Elias woke up before sunrise, but this time, the early light did not fill him with energy. He sat at the edge of his bed, silent, heavy, tired not from work, but from doubt. For weeks, he had been following his small routine, yet nothing visibly dramatic had changed. His dream of turning the empty plot of land into a flourishing garden felt distant. The patch of soil he had worked on still looked ordinary, and the tiny seeds he planted had not yet sprouted. He walked outside and stared at the ground. The earth looked dry, boring, lifeless even. For the first time, his heart whispered, maybe this was all useless. He felt the weight of discouragement pressing heavily on his chest. The voices around him did not help. Neighbors passed by and shook their heads, some laughing softly, others giving him pitying glances. One man even said, "Still working on that dirt? You've been doing the same thing for weeks. There's nothing there." Their words stung more deeply than he expected. Elias knelt beside the soil and ran his fingers across its surface, feeling the roughness, the dryness, the uncertainty. He thought of his father's advice. Every dream grows in silence before the world notices it. But even those words felt distant today. His mind battled between persistence and surrender. For the first time, the idea of giving up seemed easier than continuing. He imagined abandoning the garden, removing his tools, and walking away. No more effort, no more waiting, no more hope. But as he stood there, a memory flashed. His very first small step, the morning when he decided to plant a single seed. He remembered how proud he felt, how determined he had been, how deeply he believed in slow progress. That memory lit a tiny spark inside him. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply. The doubt was still there, but the spark was stronger. He whispered quietly to himself, "If the seeds are silent, it doesn't mean they're dead. Growth happens inside, long before it shows outside." With renewed, fragile courage, Elias picked up his watering can and continued his routine. Small, steady movements, not dramatic, not impressive, but consistent. The world around him remained silent, unchanged. And yet, deep within the soil, something had shifted. Something had begun. Elias could not see it yet, but his persistence that morning became the turning point of everything that would follow.
The next morning, Elias walked to the garden with quiet expectation. Not hope, just routine. The air felt lighter, the sky softer, but he had trained himself not to look for results. He bent down with the watering can just as he always did, ready to pour water over the plain-looking soil. And then he froze. There, near the edge of the garden bed, was a tiny flicker of green. Delicate, fragile, barely the size of a grain of rice, but undeniably alive. A small shoot had broken through the earth. Elias felt something explode inside him. Relief, joy, disbelief, gratitude. His eyes stung as he reached out gently toward the new sprout, careful not to touch it. It was the first visible sign that all his effort, all his patience, all this silent consistency had not been wasted. He knelt down, staring at the small green life as if it were a miracle. For weeks, the soil had looked dead, but underneath it, silent progress had been happening. That tiny sprout represented every unseen hour of hard work. He felt his heart whisper, "This is what small steps become." Once, he had doubted the power of a few minutes each day. Now, one fragile sprout proved that the path he chose was real, meaningful, and growing. As the morning sunlight fell gently on the soil, Elias noticed something else. If he looked very closely, he could see the faintest signs of more sprouts pushing against the surface. Not one miracle, but many. Not one reward, but a series of quiet victories waiting to rise. For the first time, he believed not just in the idea of progress, but in the process itself. The doubt that once occupied his heart dissolved, replaced by steady confidence. Elias smiled, stood up slowly, and whispered, "If one small step every day brought me this far, imagine what many more can do." His journey was far from over, but now he had proof, real proof, that patience multiplies results, tiny actions stack up into transformation, and consistency has a voice even when progress is silent. And from that day on, Elias did not work with hope alone. He worked with certainty.
Days turned into weeks, and the single sprout that at once filled Elias with hope transformed into a small cluster of green life. Each morning he watched his garden expand little by little, the way a sunrise brightens the sky without anyone noticing the exact moment the first light appears. The sprouts grew taller, stronger, and more vibrant. And as they grew, something inside Elias grew as well. His doubt faded, replaced by calm confidence, an understanding that success was never meant to be sudden. It was meant to be earned slowly and quietly through effort repeated enough times to become natural. People who had once mocked him now began slowing down as they passed by the garden. Some stared curiously. Others approached him with hesitant smiles. One neighbor said, "I didn't think anything would grow here, but you proved me wrong." Elias simply nodded, because he knew the truth. It wasn't the soil that proved them wrong, it was consistency. As the plants grew, so did the challenges. The weather shifted unpredictably. Some days brought harsh sunlight, others brought heavy rain. Elias found himself adjusting, learning, adapting. He built small supports for the weaker stems. He protected the newest shoots with leaves. He cleared weeds that tried to steal nutrients. Each action was small, but each one mattered. There were nights when he fell asleep exhausted, but he never skipped a single morning. Gradually, Elias began to see something beyond the plants themselves. He saw a deeper pattern, the same pattern that shaped every successful person's life. Growth was never a single event. It was a series of tiny decisions, one after another, done even on the days when motivation was weak and results were invisible. As the green patch spread wider across the once empty land, Elias felt a quiet pride. Not pride in the garden, but pride in the person he had become through the journey. The discipline he built began influencing the rest of his life as well. He woke up earlier, worked with more focus, and spoke with more patience. The garden was no longer just a project. It was a mirror reflecting who he was becoming. Even as the work intensified, he welcomed every challenge, because every new leaf, every new stem, every new flower reminded him of the same truth. Small steps were seeds of greatness, and they were finally beginning to bloom. One warm morning, Elias walked outside, expecting to see his usual garden, lush, bright, and steadily growing. But what he saw instead stopped him in his tracks. Overnight, the plants had erupted with color. Tiny buds had blossomed into flowers, spreading across the garden like a wave of life. Vibrant reds, soft purples, delicate whites, and warm yellows painted the once bare soil. The transformation was breathtaking. Elias felt his heartbeat quicken as he moved from one row to the next, admiring the result of months of quiet diligence. The neighbors, who had barely paid attention, now stood at the edge of the garden, awestruck. Someone whispered, "I've never seen this land look so beautiful." Another murmured, "This needs to be shared. People should see this." Elias heard them, but he wasn't focused on their reactions. He was focused on remembering what this garden used to be. Dry dirt, silent seeds, unseen effort, doubt, patience, perseverance. Now, it was transformed into proof, visible, undeniable proof that persistence changes everything. He knelt beside one of the flowers and gently touched its petals. They were soft, delicate, but full of life. A powerful thought rose in his mind. Nothing beautiful grows instantly. These flowers were not miracles. They were results. Results of mornings when progress felt invisible. Results of days when he almost gave up. Results of actions so small they seemed meaningless. Yet, added together, they became extraordinary. For the first time, Elias realized something deeper. The garden's transformation wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning. The beginning of new possibilities. The beginning of new dreams. The beginning of a new version of himself. One who believed in consistent effort, no matter how small. As the sun warmed the garden, Elias stood tall, filled with gratitude for every struggle that had shaped him. His hands were calloused, his clothes were worn, but his spirit was strong because he had learned the lesson hidden behind every petal, every leaf, every inch of growth. Small steps don't just produce big results, they transform the person taking them. And as he looked out over the flourishing garden, Elias knew that the greatest change had happened not in the land, but within him.
Months passed, and what once began as a quiet dream transformed into something far greater than Elias ever imagined. His garden, once a forgotten patch of land, now stood as a symbol of beauty, discipline, and hope. People from nearby neighborhoods came to admire it. Children played near the edges. Elders sat on shaded benches that Elias built with his own hands. What was once a private effort had become a place of inspiration for everyone. One afternoon, as Elias tended to the flowers, a young boy approached him. The boy carried a small handful of seeds in his palm, looking unsure but determined. "Sir," he asked shyly, "can you teach me how to grow something like this?" Elias looked down at the child, remembering the day he himself held seeds with the same uncertainty. He nodded and smiled warmly. "Of course," he said, "but remember, it won't grow overnight. It takes patience. It takes small steps, every day." The boy nodded eagerly, soaking in every word. Together they knelt at the edge of the soil, and Elias showed him how to plant the seeds gently, how to water them carefully, and how to protect them from harsh weather. As he spoke, more children gathered. Soon a small circle formed around him, each child holding seeds, each one ready to begin their own journey. Elias realized something profound in that moment. His garden was no longer just his creation. It was becoming a source of guidance for others.
a reminder that success was possible for anyone willing to start small and stay consistent. The transformation he had achieved was now inspiring others to transform themselves. As the sun set behind the colorful landscape, Elias stood in silence, watching the golden light spread across the garden. The flowers swayed gently in the evening breeze, and he felt a deep sense of peace. Not pride in being admired, but gratitude for the journey itself. Gratitude for every moment he wanted to quit, but didn't. Gratitude for the patience he had learned, the discipline he had built, and the strength he had gained. The garden had grown beautifully, but more importantly, he had grown into someone capable of believing in the power of small steps. He looked around at the vibrant landscape, once lifeless, now overflowing with life, and whispered softly, as if speaking to the wind. This is what persistence becomes. And with that realization, he knew his journey of growth would never truly end, because success was not a destination. It was a daily practice, a series of choices repeated with purpose and heart.
The garden stood as a living testament to a truth that many forget. Greatness never begins with something big. It begins with the courage to take one small step, even when no one is watching, even when nothing seems to change, even when doubt whispers in your ear. Elias's story reminds us that progress is often silent. Seeds grow in darkness before they break into the light. Habits strengthen quietly before their results appear. Success is shaped not by sudden leaps, but by steady footsteps taken day after day. The world may not notice your effort at first. People may doubt you. You may even doubt yourself. But every drop of effort, every moment of discipline, every tiny action compounds over time, building a path towards something extraordinary. When you stay consistent, small steps stop being small. They become momentum. They become growth. They become transformation. And one day, just like Elias, you will look around and see that everything you worked for has blossomed, slowly, quietly, beautifully. Not because you rushed, not because you waited for the perfect moment, but because you kept moving, kept believing, and never stopped taking those small, meaningful steps. Your success story begins the same way his did, with one step. And if you keep going, the results will be bigger than anything you can imagine.